Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Bengal Tiger Podcast. I'm Matthew Brune, and joining me once again is Shea Dixon. Shea, we are here a little past midnight. I'm watching the Oregon Boise State game, like I was telling you. You got your dogs put to sleep, and
They're not put to sleep on a week where we had an emergency ER vet. Put to sleep is the wrong terminology. Lundy, the golden retriever, is fully alive and well.
They're all fine. Everybody's
she's
fine.
good now. She's on the mend.
They are asleep. They're asleep. They're asleep.
Correct.
There you go.
You ran those words together a little too quickly there. Who else is asleep tonight? LSU defense in the first half?
Yep.
All right, so here we do this every week. Shout out first out Bengal Tiger subscribers, as always, live chat, the live thread on game days, win or lose, pure entertainment,
100%.
Maybe more so than the game at times.
Yes.
For 4 solid quarters. So shout out to everyone. If you're not a member, I'm telling you, you're missing out. We hang with you guys here, but for what it costs for a cup of coffee, cut it out once a day a month.
1,700 replies in that thread.
Oh, yeah.
Off the top of my head, just doing.
And we'll have a lot of recruiting news, not just out of football. And people are going to be like, "Who cares?" What the football kids thought of a Nicholls game or whatever. But it was a big weekend for women's basketball and men's. So
yes, we'll both those up tomorrow.
Look,
today
we do our review, so we'll dive into it. It was a 44-21 win in a game where LSU, minutes into the second half, Maddie B was only winning by 2 points. But I now wrote about this on the site, good and bad. We'll talk about it. I'm going to be one, and you can go ahead and turn it off now if you don't agree, or stick around and see why. I'm not freaking out over this at all. Nicholls is a very solid FCS school, favored to win the Southland, and this is their Super Bowl. They came in here ready to roll, and they're made up of a bunch of Louisiana guys. Louisiana puts out athletes. If you come out flat, especially like LSU did on defense, they're going to hold on to the ball as long as they can, and they did, and they scored touchdowns. And there's a lot of questions to be answered, but none that I didn't already kind of know. So I'll say almost that I learned a little more about the team tonight in a good way than bad, and we can dive into that. But just player-wise, some young guys, like I think that there are some pieces they can use that I wasn't sure about before the game.
Yeah, I think I definitely have negatives to talk about. But we'll get to that in a bit. I think when we start with the positives, and I think to your point, this didn't shock me. My betting play of the week was Nicholls. I predicted 49-14 as the final score, which was not terribly far off. Like I didn't see this being a 60-5 or a 60-6 game. At the end of the day, like this team is significantly better than Southern and Grambling from the last 2 years. Like this is a top 25 FCS team. With that being said, obviously LSU, we wanted to see LSU come out ready to play, especially coming off a loss, and put your foot down against a team that clearly is not as nearly as talented as the other teams that you're going to face in the SEC or even in the non-conference. We'll get to the problems, but I do think there was a good amount of positives, especially from Garrett Nussmeier, the receivers, and ultimately, while the positives weren't overwhelming, I think I understand what you're saying about we didn't learn anything new or much. We didn't learn a lot of new things about this team. I will say it felt like all of our preconceived notions or our thoughts after week one were kind of reinforced.
And there were questions we had that still we don't have answers to yet.
The run game concerns are real.
That's number one on the list.
The secondary is bad to me, just flat out.
Okay, but some young guys played well, but also the return of Zy Alexander I thought was key. He mid-season ACL tear after starting 8 games, and now he's back out there making plays. He started all 8 of those games last year. PJ Woodland played well. You know what Ashton Stamps is. Like, when you're working to find pieces, that's big. We said all offseason, whenever Zy gets back, that's huge. Well, that's tonight.
The fact that we are, again, having to rely on Zy returning.
You have to rely on what you got. They're relying on a kid who was playing at Oak Grove High School in Mississippi last year to start at corner.
Yeah, jeez.
As the hope, Matty B, to start at corner.
Nicholls started the game 10 of 10 passing.
They did.
And was very comfortable. Now the run game I think is a little. I think the run game of Nicholls is a little overstated, obviously, and Brian Kelly talked about it post game. But it's like they had the 67-yard run, which is unacceptable. Unacceptable. To give up that run the way that they did. The linebackers got washed out. The defensive line, if they were stunting, got washed out. Doesn't matter. Then Major Burns comes and just does an awful job at filling the gap. That can't happen. But outside of that run, it was like, 2.5 yards per carry or something like that. So again, what felt worse was that with the fact that, especially in the first quarter and the first half, LSU couldn't get off the field on third.
That's correct.
And so you pair that with the fact that you're playing Nicholls, and Nicholls is kind of blowing you up off the ball occasionally. It's just, and then his 10 of 10 passing, it just puts it all together. And the LSU defense now takes center stage for. You're in the third quarter and you're having to go basically score for them is what it feels like. And so, again, it wasn't anything new to me because I wasn't as high on this defense coming off the last game as a lot of people. Now, again, they were better than last year, obviously, in that first game, but it was still like 7.5 yards per play for USC. And now we get through this Nicholls game and it was 5 for Nicholls. And at one point it was like 6.5 for Nicholls before like the fourth quarter. So
yeah. I'll also say that it felt weird because it felt like, man, is Nicholls running it all over LSU? Outside of that 67-yard run, which Colin Guggenheim broke free on, and the game's blending, was that a Wildcat play or did he just take that one?
No. Well, he is their quarter. Well, he's like their. He played a lot of quarterback. It was like
he only threw one pass. He rushed it 25 times.
Yeah. He's like their.
McQuaid obviously is their quarterback.
Yeah, he's their passer. McQuaid's their passer.
Yeah.
But yes, anyways, I do want to say real quick before you keep going, and I saw this in a thread, and you replied to it on this thread. The more alarming thing than the yards per carry for Nicholls is the tackle for loss numbers from LSU. It's only 2.
Well, and no sacks. But then again, as you said, Nicholls worked it quickly out. They knew they weren't going to sit back there, but you think at some time you're going to get a sack or whatever, or stop some run in the backfield. And that didn't happen more than twice. But outside of that 67-yard run, nobody ran it. Like nobody else had a run longer than 5 yards. And at one point before that 67-yard run, it was 2.2 yards a carry. So it wasn't, they were running the ball for little amounts of yards, but it would move the chains. More alarming was that they were like 10 for 10 or whatever passing and for 100 yards. And most alarming became that they were able to execute the game plan they wanted perfectly in the first half of sit on the ball and move the chains. And they did it twice for 7+ minutes. God. Both times went for touchdowns. One of them, they went for it on fourth down at their own 25 in like the first quarter. So give that up.
That's what made it worse. Was it felt like those drives, like how do you let them drive 13 plays, 7.5 minutes for a touchdown? And as a coach, I can only imagine how frustrating that is because it feels like that drive never ends. It just keeps going and going, and that's what you don't want. Obviously, as the 45-point favorite, is a 7.5 minute scoring drive from the other team. Like that just takes all the wind out of your sails. So.
And this was a game that nobody scored in the fourth quarter. It was kind of just like, all right, it's over. It's 44-21 now. But leading up to that, it was LSU. They went 3 and out and punted on the first drive. Then touchdown. Missed field goal. Boy, was Brian Kelly laying into Damian Ramos on that one. There was some time mismanagement because Ricky Collins was in from Nussmeier at the time. And when Nussmeier got banged up, and then they had a running clock and took 10 seconds off it. And then they first he got blocked, then he missed it. But after that, they come out, touchdown. Like I said, nothing in the fourth quarter for either team. Everybody kind of just said, all right, let's go. That's a really solid night on offense. What hurt on defense was that stretch where they kept it for 7+ minutes on 2 drives and scored, and then came right out after half and score on that 67-yard run. So that's the 21 points. That's what is worrisome. Yeah. But at the end of the day, I'm not freaking out over this one. They did what they had to do. They went out and won 44-21 because let me tell you, Matty B, and we already know what happened in week 1. look around the top 25. Oklahoma State, top 15 team range, right? They should have lost to Arkansas. Somehow came back and won. Kudos to them. Boise State, Oregon's gone down to the wire. Penn State's a top 10 team. They barely beat Bowling Green.
Bowling gave them problems.
Georgia Tech's in the top 25. They lost to Syracuse. Kansas State should have lost to Tulane. They're a top 20 team. A top 10 team got thumped by another top 10 team in Texas, Michigan. Utah did not pull away from Baylor like they should have. Iowa lose to Iowa State. Notre Dame, maybe most notably in the top 5, pays Northern Illinois $1.5 million and loses at home in South Bend. Look, beyond Kansas, a top 20 team, lost to Illinois. Bama, I know you'll read 42-16. You're reading that one and being like, Bama did what they should have done. Just like Bama fans who didn't watch LSU are reading 44-21 and saying, yep, handled business. In the fourth quarter, that game was like a 3 or 6 point game. So Bama didn't play great. Tennessee blew them out. Ohio State blew them out. Oklahoma almost lost to an 0-2 Houston team, couldn't put up more than 16 points. And Arizona stuck with Northern Arizona, or I should say vice versa, almost all night. So outside of like Ole Miss, Georgia, Tennessee, I mean, there are some teams playing very well. There's a lot more teams in this top 15, top 20 that are like, boy, that's not how I expected that one to go, including South Carolina, who beat Kentucky tonight after last week almost losing to Old Dominion. And to give you a feel, like, guess for how odd the week 3 slate might be, game day is headed to South Carolina for a team that beat Kentucky, but almost lost to Old Dominion a week ago, and an LSU team that is 1-1 coming off of a whatever game against Nicholls and then a tight one against USC. So Columbia, 11 a.m. kickoff with game day there. But let's dive into this real quick, Matty B. I think the best way to do this is run through. I did 5 good and 5 bad things from the game. I'll say it, and let's just briefly each give a thought. And Oregon did just kick a field goal.
Yeah, I just had it up on my phone too.
So, but barely snuck by a team they were highly favored in for the second week in a row. So crazy. Oregon top 5 or 10, whatever they are now, fraud watch officially. But in fairness too, if we're going to say we're going to say we didn't take too much away from this one, let's do a good, a bad. We won't go heavy on either, but we'll go quick. One good, Nussmeier. I said Nussmeier and Lacey.
Yes.
That tandem, you said, how do we replace Jaden Malik and Brian Thomas, all these first-round picks? 6 touchdowns for Nuss is the second most in LSU history passing. Ties Daniels and Burrow. Burrow had 7 to hold the record. And Lacey casually, while the announcers say that he is bleeding after being stepped on from multiple spots in his ankle, gets wrapped up and goes for 3 touchdowns. On like 5 catches. So no doubt those two are exactly what LSU needs to at least pick up. As you said, you wanted this to be a top 10 offense, top 15 offense.
Yeah.
Clearly, Lacey and Nuss, that connection is a must every week.
Yeah. Garrett Nussmeier is really, really good, guys. I don't think people – and I understand, like, the quarterback, it's just every time a team struggles, it's like, oh, are we sure the quarterback's good? That's what it feels like. LSU fans are like trying to talk themselves into like, well, are we sure Nussmeier is good? I don't know. Guys, Nussmeier is really, really good.
Yeah, he's
like,
fine.
Just watching him.
Everyone said throw the deep balls. He sailed some tonight,
he did.
Is something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I wasn't like watching it in person. Like it's nice because you could see like the routes develop and everything, like downfield a little bit more. And I wasn't too concerned with the deep balls. I feel like Nussmeier obviously has an arm.
But we've seen him hit them before, so
yeah. But the intermediate stuff, man, he just lasers them in. He's so good. So yeah, please do not worry about Garrett Nussmeier. He's gonna be good. Lacey's gonna be good. Through 3 starts now of Garrett Nussmeier, like he's passed every test. Wisconsin, USC, Nicholls. Like I think he's just been really good. So yeah, Garrett Nussmeier's awesome.
And then in the 5 bad things I wrote, one was defense in the first half, and the second was defense immediately after halftime. We've already kind of touched on that, obviously, but I'm not overly concerned. I say the same thing Brian Kelly did at halftime. Get off the field.
Yeah.
Nicholls put you in, 14 points on 2 7+ minute drives. You go to halftime and say, let's get it figured out, and immediately come out and just bust one right up the middle and miss tackles. There were guys not in the right spot, and then they miss tackles, and he runs for 67 yards. But look, after that, obviously no more points, but that it's concerning. You have to acknowledge it, even if it is something where you say, okay, it is what it is. Maybe a lack of focus. Maybe they're a little tired coming off a short week. I can take the play after halftime. Like, okay, you busted one on us. Yeah. A whole lot different than when you go 10 plus plays for 7+ minutes and do exactly what you want to do and score touchdowns.
Yeah, I think this defense is gonna have to do. Again, this was a reinforcing performance for me. I wanted to see them come out and hold Nicholls to like 7 or 10 points, and to give up 3 touchdowns is concerning. And so now you go against a South Carolina team that week 1, I would have said the offense sucked. Week 2,
South Carolina is one of the most polarizing teams in college football.
Week 2, I haven't watched the film. I haven't watched the Kentucky game.
Old Dominion dropped 2 balls inside the 10 and both got recovered by South Carolina. Old Dominion should have beaten South Carolina 2 weeks ago.
So. Again, they have some players and whatnot, so we'll see. But again,
they have a pass rush. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, they do. So again, we'll have to see. But LSU's defense, I think, especially to me, the secondary is still a question mark. I'll also say I like that they rotate a lot of defensive backs in, but it was a little weird that they did it every single play. Like I don't want to say there was no rhyme or reason, but it just felt like every single play there was Spears coming in, Jackson coming out, or Burns coming out.
I'm fine with it. If you know you're going to win a game like that anyways, do whatever. Get them out there.
Yeah. No, I mean, it was just
if it's series by series, play by play, I don't care.
Yeah, so it was interesting. Hopefully they figured something out, because they're going to have to be a lot sharper moving forward.
Okay, moving on to another good. Look, some true freshmen stepped up. Gabe, you mentioned Deshaun Spears on D, 5 tackles. He had a pass breakup that led to a turnover on downs. Gabe Relford comes in and leads the entire D line with 6 tackles. PJ Woodland got some extended time, obviously, and had some big plays, had 4 tackles, had a stop for a loss when they only had 2 of them. Forced a fumble, played well, obviously, and you want to see that. We mentioned, obviously, Zaya Alexander being back. You've got Ashton Stamp starting, but you need something from a freshman, PJ Woodland, and it seems like they're going to start to try to see more and more what they're going to get from him. He played well, but on offense, man, hat tip. 2 true freshmen got score touchdowns, both early in the game. Juwan Johnson, the LCA dynamic all-purpose man at quarterback in high school, plays DB, and then when John Emery gets hurt, they say, hey, come over and play some running back. They threw it to him 3 times. He caught all 3 of the passes, and he scored. And Matty B, this will play into another one of my goods, but they got down the red zone on the very first trip. And they had red zone woes a week ago. We'll talk about that in a second in the goods. But everyone said, well, why can't they throw to a guy like Trey'Dez Green in the red zone? Well, Joe Sloan heard you. He from the 1-yard line, they said, all right, Trey'Dez, go and get it. He did. Trey'Dez Green scores. So shout out, right? Some freshmen stepped up early and often too, not like in the fourth quarter, like where it didn't matter at all, type thing.
Well, it was funny. One of the 5 things, I wrote 5 things that I wanted to see in this game, and I don't want to steal your thunder here, but Trey'Dez Green or Kamorian Pimpton touchdown was one of those 5 things. And so, that's definitely reassuring. We didn't see, did Pimpton play? Like I didn't see him much at all. I have to get the snap counts. I don't have them in front of me.
He didn't record any catches, obviously.
They went to, so we saw Bo Bordelon play some tight end. We saw Trey'Dez Green play a lot. But I don't remember vividly seeing an 88 out there for Pimpton. So I probably missed him. But anyways, that was one of my keys. And so it was good to see, or not keys. It was one of the things I wanted to see. And so it was good to see Pimpton get a catch. Or Green.
Green touchdown. Sorry. Yes, correct. So kudos to both those guys getting their first college TDs, and then the guys on defense who played quite well. And I guess we can blend this too right now with another positive that I wrote about, my 4th one. 5 for 5. You hear me say it a lot. I've been saying 5 for 5 for a decade. That's what LSU went in the red zone tonight, Matty B. And guess what? All 5 of them were touchdowns. So Last week, that was a point of emphasis, right? That they got into the red zone, they couldn't come away with points or, settled for field goals. This time, 5 touchdowns. Yes, it's Nicholls.
Yeah.
I don't care. You get in the red zone 5 times, score touchdowns all 5 times.
None of them on fourth downs either, I don't think, right? It was just straight off. They didn't have to
I
go for it
don't
on fourth
think
down. I
LSU
don't think
went
so.
for it on 4th down. They went for it once. I don't remember what play
It
it
wasn't in the
was.
red zone, I don't think. So anyways, yeah, it was better. It was a lot cleaner. I don't know if you
Much
have this
better.
written down. Tell me if you have this written down for a negative. The penalties.
I don't.
Okay. That was one of the 5 things I want. Again, going into this game, I had 5 things. One of them was no penalties because I said this on the preview pod. I said you had 10 for 99 in game 1. This time you're at home, low pressure environment. You should have spent the whole week focused on the procedural penalties, the personal foul penalties, the pass interference. Like all this should have been worked out. Again, you still in the game with 7 penalties. Again,
Only
only
for 37.
okay, cool.
I
Still,
hate
there were
the
some
I
procedural
hate the
ones.
hand clap rule. That's so dumb.
There were some procedural
I
ones.
forgot about the hand clap rule until tonight.
Will Campbell had another false start on the early on. They had a substitution penalty out of halftime. Like these are just small mistakes you just can't make. I understand it's only for 37 yards in the game, but it's like you had 9 penalties week 1, 7 week 2. If you have 9 penalties against South Carolina, you're going to put yourself in a bad position. So just that
No
was
doubt.
another concerning thing.
Okay, here my third, since we're going positive there, third negative, maybe one of the most glaring, a lack of run game. They scored 6 touchdowns tonight, LSU did, but they were all passing. So no points from the run game. The longest run, 2 of them, 2 guys went for 12 yards. Only 2 runs went for beyond 10 yards. One of them was from Nussmeier, your quarterback. 21 carries, 64 yards, no touchdowns, 3 yards an attempt. Only 2 guys going for more than 10 yards on a carry, one of them being your quarterback. That's something I thought they could do tonight, that it was like, all right, cool, go to South Carolina, then figure it out, because you're now on the road in the SEC and you still can't run the football.
Yeah. And it's just jarring to watch because there were 0 sacks. So no sacks are contributing to this. It's not like there was a minus 10 at any point in this equation. So they just didn't get the push up front again that we expected them to get. And so now we're looking at it. If Caleb Jackson is not going to be the weapon that we thought he was going to be, whether that's his fault or the offensive line fault or the coach's fault, I don't know. But like now you're looking at, can Josh Williams do it? He's not obviously explosive. So now, and you don't have a running quarterback. So now the running game as a whole just looks really bleak. It just does. And so now you have South Carolina, who has a good defensive line and has some capable guys that can give you fits. If LSU goes a 3rd straight game without running the ball, you at a certain point you have to wonder about the consistency of this offense just in the big picture. I love Nussmeier. I love Lacey. I love these guys as the passing game. I think they could throw the ball 40 times a game and be okay, but there will be times when they need to run the ball, and if they can't, which we saw in the USC game, if they can't run the ball when they need to, then you're going to lose games that you should win, and that's just the reality of it. So it's a huge concern.
And look, we'll dive into this more this week, mailbag, everything else. But Caleb Jackson is someone a lot of people thought, hey, look, a lot of fans said he needs to be RB1. He has to be RB1, and he showed great flashes in numerous spots as a freshman. He got 9 carries tonight, nearly, basically hitting double digits almost. One of the carries went for 10 yards or 9 yards. I think one of his carries went for 9 yards. Solid. The other 8 carries went for a total of 10 yards. 8 carries for 10 yards. That ain't going to cut it. Whatever it is, O-line blocking, his vision, what he's doing, whatever, the play call, the design, it does not matter to me. Nothing he has done through 2 weeks leads you to believe he's a running back 1 at this point. So that is something they've got to figure out. Obviously, without John Emery, it becomes even more tough. They throw the football quite well. They cannot run the football at all. We don't even have to break it down. You see it.
Yeah.
We don't have any answers for it yet. So until they can run the football and we find out what works, they're stuck in this.
Yeah. And in my film study last week of the running game, I one of the main takeaways was the tight end's lack of blocking. And so it was interesting to see them put Bordelon at tight end. And let him go in their end zone package and try to punch it in. And, I guess that's one way of substituting those tight end struggles when you want to have 12 personnel in obvious run situations. So we'll see how that goes.
Right. I can kind of combine a good and a bad here. One of my bads was I didn't think that the defense brought the fight tonight to an FCS opponent a week after you lost in a game where you actually, I thought, played pretty well on defense, right?
Yeah.
All things considered, you had made steps forward from last year.
Yeah.
And then you allow them to come out and, as we've talked about, as y'all watched or as you listened to or read about, the first half wasn't good at all. 7+ minute drives, touchdowns, coming right out of halftime, scoring again. It's not. It felt like Nicholls was just kind of hitting them blow, like it's like a boxing match, like ribs, bang, hit him with a knock, like one that puts you on the mat, ribs, knockout, and it was just like, what is LSU going to swing back here? What's going to happen? And I didn't think they were going to lose the game, but boy, you think, all right, they're going to come out on defense. They know they didn't win, but the defense showed some promise last week, and then yikes. But then in my good, I did say that they answered after that long touchdown run to start the second half. The next, 6 possessions, they had 2 turnovers. They forced 3 straight punts, and then the last play of the game went for -7 yards, and it's over with. So no more points, no more yards, turnovers were had, all that. So that was good, but then you don't come out good at all. And you're going on the road now in the SEC. Like, wait till you play Ole Miss, who drops 50 on everybody they play. Like, you can't walk out and just think, okay, yeah, we'll be fine. Like, no, there needs to be an intensity level, and Nicholls had a better intensity level than LSU did to start the game, and that's just what it is.
I don't know if they understand it, the players or whoever,
and that's inexcusable because it's within their control, right?
Yes.
Like, you can control how hard you actually want to play.
Yes, and this defense is not good enough personnel wise or experienced enough to get away with playing half-assed. Like, you just can't. So they have to come out next week and bring the fight to South Carolina. And while I'll say I'm not fully buying Brian Kelly's tired excuse, or if he said it's not an excuse, it's a reason. Which, okay, it's week 2 of the season. It's your first home game. If anything, you should come out ready to play, coming off a loss, and then get tired in the second half. Maybe cool. Maybe you spent all your energy. It's week 2 of the season, man. These kids have been waiting 8 months to play this game, play at home, entire stadium. Some of these guys have been dreaming their whole lives of playing this, and now you're tired in week 2, and now you have to go play at 11 a.m. on the road. So now you essentially have a travel day ahead of time where, it's an easy flight. It's not a hard flight, but you're traveling there, waking up in the morning. Are you going to be tired for that game too? Like, come on.
And you say that about LSU's guys. Nicholls, more than half their roster, if not 75+%, dreamed of playing a game in Tiger Stadium, and they actually showed up and played like they had dreamed of playing in Tiger Stadium.
It was interesting.
All right, before we get out of here, I'll give you my last one, and this is not. I put this in my 5 bads just because it's something I'm curious to hear talk. Actually, just to see how it plays out. I don't think this is indicative of Blake Baker, who's their DC. But I called it the curious case of number 7. And look, when people ask what's up with the usage and Harold Perkins at linebacker and move him, Harold Perkins told us this offseason, I wanted to be developed as a linebacker because that's what I need for the NFL to put more film out there. He had 3 tackles tonight. He had 1 that was a solo tackle. He had no other stats that got logged. He had some missed plays where it was on him, 7 that missed that play. And I'm not trying to pick on Harold Perkins here, but and I know it came at the edge rusher position, all this, but the days of that Arkansas game as a true freshman where it was like him versus an entire team and he won seemed like so long ago. Like, look, I don't know what it is. I don't think Blake Baker is one who doesn't know how to use his linebackers. I actually think Harold Perkins can cover very well.
Yeah.
But we're not getting any if I'm LSU, I'm saying we're not getting any production out of him right now, are you?
Yeah, I feel
This
like
will get asked on the mailbag. This will
yeah,
get like
I was gonna say
50
I feel like
people will
on
say
Monday we
something
can
about this in the
really,
mailbag.
really get into this
Yeah, I
on
don't mean to
Monday
really dive into it. I'm just
be-
trying to
because
acknowledge that I see it too.
I feel like we could talk about this for like 20 minutes, and I don't want to talk about it for 20 minutes. It's 1 a.m. But it, it is so interesting now because you had an NFL linebackers coach, Matt House, and I'm not saying Matt House was good, but you had a linebackers coach in Matt House who knew, and at least at least had an idea for what he wanted to do with Perkins. Worked maybe freshman year as an edge rusher, sophomore year inside didn't work. Now you have Blake Baker, a guy who everybody thinks is better than Matt House, is a more gets more out of his linebackers. And through 2 games, Perkins has been a no-show. I think he has significant problems getting off of blocks in the run game. I think he has trouble with his vision in the run game. And if he's not pass rushing, then is he dropping in straight into coverage? And as a pass rusher, I don't know if he's not coming off the edge, he can't use his speed in the same way. So he has to take on blocks and kind of actually use some technique there. And I don't know how refined his technique is. All of that's to say he's not a perfect player, but he's basically a perfect athlete, but not a perfect defensive player, if that makes sense. So it's just
No, it does. And
I'm
look,
it's tough.
I think Blake Baker. I don't think Blake Baker is a very good, proven DC and
Yes.
linebackers coach. Harold Perkins is an extremely good athlete who has proven it in high school, 5-star, and
Yeah.
right away as a freshman. I just don't know if Harold Perkins is a middle linebacker.
So now it becomes, which we had this question of the offseason, which I will give LSU fans, some of them out there were like, hey, what if he played star? And my question is, what's the difference between star and Sam in terms of he's still going to be asked to cover a lot, which people got mad at last year. So
But he's good in coverage.
yeah. So then it's like, I don't want him at defensive end because I think Deshaun Womack, I think even like Gabriel Relaford
No,
off the
star
edge,
makes more sense because
Braden Swinton and stuff.
then Weeks is on the field, and
Yeah.
then and let's be real, Major Burns has started at star. Are you willing to roll the dice and say a guy like Harold Perkins can maybe make some more plays? But then let's go back to the reality. At no point this offseason in practices did we see Harold Perkins rep at star.
No.
It was other safeties. That's a
Yep.
third safety. So look, I don't have answers. I don't know what they're going to do. I'm just pointing it out that I
Yep.
see what y'all see,
Weird.
that where is this guy that took over these games as a freshman in spots to the point where now it's doesn't look like a preseason All-American to me. And I don't know what the answer is, but certainly I think that's probably one of the things being discussed a good bit in the defensive film, staff room and with Coach Kelly.
Yeah. So that's Perkins in order for this defense to get where it needs to go. I think we both
Yeah.
said like the linebacker room has to be awesome.
And he's a great
it's
player. He's a great athlete. He's all this. Like I think that this can come together. I just don't know why it hasn't yet.
Yeah. It's gonna be. I'm gonna rewatch the game a little bit because there were some times where he got blocked out of a play, and it's like,
Oh, that happened last week too.
is it an effort thing? Is it technique? He's not too small for inside linebacker. He's 6'1" and he's 225 now. Like he should be able to take on some blocks. It's a process, and I think we'll definitely get a question about it on Monday, so we can dive into it there. But it's a good point. It's a good point.
All right. Let's wrap it up. Done. 44-21, 1-1. Moving on to South Carolina, 11 a.m. College game day next weekend.
Man, before
We have
this week, I
mailbag
was
pod
like,
this week, recruiting pod this week.
yeah.
Will be plenty of stuff coming for y'all.
Before today, I felt so good about like this stretch of South Carolina, South Alabama, and UCLA.
I don't think anything changes for me. I don't care that South Carolina beat Kentucky.
It's just I wish I was as confident as I was going into today about South Carolina.
I almost put South Carolina as a loss
on your predictions.
On the predictions, just thinking that's a tough game. But when it went at 11 a.m. and then we see Lenora Sellers last week just lay an egg and look terrible.
Awful.
And they had but like I said, they're so polarizing of a team.
Yeah.
Like it would shock no South Carolina. If it would shock LSU fans, no South Carolina fan would be shocked if they went out and lost 35-10 next week.
Yeah.
Like they'd say, this is exactly what we expected. I don't know why we got fooled by the Kentucky win.
Yeah.
So
it's going to be interesting. It's going to be
plenty to break down, But thank y'all for being here, obviously. All the subs, YouTube. What do you say, Matty B? Like it, subscribe it, comment, all that.
Subscribe to the Bengal Tiger On3. if you haven't already. We appreciate y'all for joining us. And yeah, we'll be back Monday mailbag. If you're on the board and you're a subscriber, I usually post around like 7:30 p.m. or so. Leave it open for an hour. So get your questions in because we're not leaving it open all night. So I know some people are like, you do it too late. Sorry, you got to stay up. Set an alarm if you have to. But yeah, that's all we got for y'all today. Hope y'all enjoyed it, and we will talk to y'all later.